Francesca.
I'm Victoria.
I'm Laura.
And welcome to Novel Nights. Hi everyone, welcome to Novel Nights. We gather here every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, but guess what? That is going to be changing. I want you to know ASAP. Novel Nights is becoming Novel Hour. We're going daytime. Daytime, everyone, starting February 5th. So that's still a Thursday. We're still gathering on Thursday. The difference is we're going to go live at 12 noon. So come join us, okay, for lunch. It's like a lunchtime kiki. We're going to be talking all the things. So every Thursday, 12 noon Eastern time, starting February 5th. So whether you're working from home, whether you're at the office in the cubicle, whether you're staying at home, whatever you're doing, come join us. We'd love to chat with you. But today, we are talking about all things magical realism books. If you're watching us live, let us know in the comments where you're joining us live from. But more importantly, what is the temperature where you are located, okay? We are Floridians, but it is cold. But I know it's probably colder somewhere else, and then somewhere else it's probably warm. So let us know in the chat live where you're joining us from, but also what is the temperature. Again, we're talking about magical realism books. I'll be doing some women's fiction-y books. Laura, what kind of books are you sharing today for magical realism?
Surprise, rom-coms.
Rom-coms. Listen, Laura always gives us the feel-good books. Fran, what kind of magical realism books you're going to share?
I'm bringing some emotional stuff. A lot of them are centered on family. I did bring a couple of classics that I think should be read by everybody that likes magical realism, like foundational books. And also, I am bringing some screen adaptations that you could watch.
Nice. I love this. See, I wanted to not be predictable and bring the classic because 9 out of 10 times I'm always bringing the classic. But we're really excited to share some magical realism books with you. Again, if you're just joining us live, welcome. Let us know in the chat where you're joining us from and what the temperature is. But without further ado, we're going to get into the books. I don't know what is already going on. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to kick off Francesca and Laura, and I am going to jump into my reads. So today for magical realism books, I'm sharing women's fiction books. I realize I've been gravitating to those magical realism stories a lot. So I wanted to share 5 books that I read and loved and highly recommend. Okay, so the first book I want to share with you is entitled The Memo. It's by Rachel Dodds and Lauren Meekling. Again, I hope I'm saying their names right. I did interview them for the podcast, but I forgot the pronunciation. I interviewed them on the podcast, so you can just check out the Reader's Couch. It was lots of fun. But in The Memo, we meet our main character. Her name is Jenny. She is a mid-30-something woman. She's in a relationship. And her boyfriend, he's kind of more of like, eye candy, good-looking guy. He's not so much a partner in her life. We also see her at a point where she's working at a nonprofit. She likes it, but not so much. It feels more like a vanity project for her. And her boss is insufferable. I think we've all had an insufferable boss at one point. So, if you can relate, let's talk about it in the comments. Now, her boyfriend, we find out he cheats on her. Then we see her looking at her friends, that her friends she went to college with, and she's realizing, oh my God, they're doing so much better than me. They're getting the dream jobs, they're getting the promotions, they have the lives I want. And she's starting to question every single choice she's made from college, straight up. Now, we then meet someone else who is a former college counselor of hers, which, by the way, she went to her college reunion, which she reluctantly wanted to go to. But then she shows up, and then her former college counselor reveals that, hey, you remember that college meeting we were supposed to have together and you did not come to? Well, had you come, you would have received the memo, which is the title of the book. Now we find out the memo is actually kind of like a guide, a kind of magical, helpful tool that would help her live the life that she actually wanted to live. So Now we realize she actually missed the memo. Now, I know this is like common speak where you're like, oh, you didn't get the memo. Well, she didn't get the memo literally. So now, through the memo, she's able to kind of like go back in time, to critical moments in her life where she can make different choices to kind of rewrite her story. So naturally, with books like these, you start to question, well, hey, if I fix one thing, does it break something else? And what happens? Now, I felt this was super relatable because I feel like, and I can only speak from a woman's point of view, I'm a woman, but I feel like as women, we often question, did we make the right decisions? Why is everyone's life looking a certain type of way and mine isn't? So this book kind of helps to answer some of those questions. It's funny at certain bits, but it's also heartbreaking at the same time. And like you would expect, she eventually learns that there's no such thing as a perfect life, just the one that you choose to live and like your decisions that you make in your life. So that's what really matters. So that's the first book, The Memo. Again, if you follow me, my podcast, The Reader's Couch, I chatted with both these authors and it was just lots of fun. Okay, the second book I want to share with you is the Sophie Cousins book. And it kind of has a similar premise because you're going to pick up a theme because, like I said, I really wanted to focus on women's fiction for magical realism today. And this one is entitled The Good Part. So it's The Good Part by Sophie Cousins. Now, our main character in this one, so in the memo, our main character was like a 30-something. In this one, our main character is a 20-something. And again, it can be one of the most tumultuous times in your life. So in this one, our main character is a 20-something. She doesn't really have the finances to live the life she wants to live. She is living with flatmates, who just make an absolute mess of everything. They don't clean, the place isn't tidy. It's very small. And she feels like she's really stuck in a cycle also of like bad dates. So every time like she's going out on a date, it's just like horrible. And I mean, look, men are trash, right? I mean, we can agree. But anyways, so she's in this, what she feels is a very just bad and toxic cycle. She feels like she's running out of time, which again, when you're in your 20s, you feel like, oh my God, I'm getting old and I'm running out of time. But the truth is, you know what? Your life is just starting. You really are a baby. But again, at that age, you really don't know that. Now, long story short, one night she is out and she stumbles upon like this magical, what was it again? Like a magical washing machine. Yes. And she is so desperate. I think it's like a magical place. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember that part. But anyway, she decides that, look, if I can get any wish right now, I just want to get to the good part of my life. Okay. I just want to jump to the part when everything is figured out, when, you have this amazing life, whatever she imagines. So she makes this wish. So she wakes up the next day and she is in the good part of her life. So she has an amazing husband. She has the great career, she even has a child at this point. And just, everything in her life is good. But here's the catch. She doesn't remember any of it. So she has no idea like how she actually got to this good part in her life. So she's like plopped in this good life. And now she's trying to figure, okay, how do I navigate this? It's great. I have everything that I've wanted, but I think she starts to realize that because she missed the journey and she doesn't have the memory, she doesn't have the memories of how she met her husband. She doesn't have the memories of having her son. She doesn't have, those falling in love memories, the highs and the lows. It's just blank. She's just in this place she wanted to be. So we really kind of see her kind of, grappling with, how should I say it? Getting everything that you wanted, but also missing on the important parts. I think the thing I loved about this one is that when we think of social media and we see like the highlight reel of everyone else's lives, I feel, well, for me anyway, this was my takeaway, that the messy parts, the messy middle to whatever your version of your good life is just as important. So this one is fun. You'll laugh out loud and, you'd have some thought-provoking moments. But yeah, I think it was good fun. And that's The Good Part by Sophie Cousins. Okay, my next book is Una Out of Order by Margarita Montemor. Now, I had a chat with Margarita for the podcast, but I don't think it was my podcast at the time. I think it was when I was doing some stuff with some indie bookstores. So I don't think it's on my feed, but I don't remember. But maybe one day I'll find it and re-release it because it was a good chat. But Una Out of Order, again, remember I said my magical realism books are women's fictions books, okay? And in this one, we meet a woman's life who is flipped upside down, like literally. This one is set around New Year, so it has like that New Year vibe. And we see her at one point, even younger. So we had that 20 something. I think this one was like 19. Don't quote me, but I just remember she was in college. That I remember. And we see her kind of at this point, I think she's at this New Year's party and she's trying to decide, hey, should I continue on with my band? Because she's a part of a band. So just think of it like she's debating between pursuing her creative pursuits or going off to school. And, you know, she's debating all this stuff. And again, it's New Year's. And then she wakes up the next morning and she's in a whole different decade of her life, right? And we see her kind of going through this sequence of life in different years and decades, right? So like one minute she would be 19, the next minute she's like 35, then the next minute she's like 20 something, then the next minute she's like 50 something. She is just all over the place, hence the name Una Out of Order, because she's living life out of the normal, you know, the age, the progression of age. She's all over the place. So every year, because it's like every new year now, she's living her life out of just complete sequence. She's waking up at different points. Oh, and mind you, she has no idea what happened before, like none. She has no idea what's coming up next. And we see her now like, okay, this is a mess. I need to kind of create some order for myself. So what does she do? She starts leaving herself like little notes so that when she comes back at whatever age or stage she comes back at, she will kind of have like a little idea of, okay, this is what I did back then. Like either don't make this mistake or this is what I should do and so on. But even though she leaves notes for herself, it's still kind of chaotic. And she also doesn't always take her own advice. So even if a future Una is telling later Una, like, don't do this, it doesn't, you know, she's still going to make mistakes. So I enjoyed it. I thought the quirky, all over the place kind of thing really worked. It was also selected for the book club. Which book club is this on the cover? Good Morning America. There we go. It was selected for a Good Morning America pick. I thought it was a good pick. This was a pandemic book. Like, I think this one came out 2020, smack when we were in the middle of all of it. And for me, it was just a good escape. Is the book perfect? No. But I really enjoyed it. So it's chaotic, but it's also hopeful. And it just reminds you, obviously, to, you know, focus on the present and just, you know, not the version of your life, the future self. Don't be mad at your past self, but also don't, you know, have all these expectations for your future. Just, you know, try and be present. So, yep, that's Una Out of Order. Continuing in my women's fiction, magical realism books, I want to talk about The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. Now, this was a 2024 book. It was also selected for the Read with Jenna book club. And I was really excited to see it because this one was fun. I'm trying to remember. Someone recommended this to me. I think I was on someone's podcast and I can't remember now, but I was recommended it and I was like, oh, let me read it. I remember I got an early copy and I did, and it was fun. So this one is a very unique premise. And again, we're sticking in the women's fiction, what do you call it? Women's fiction, magical realism. Now, in this one, we meet our main character. Again, her life is always a mess, always a mess. But one night she comes home to something very surprising and very different, right? She comes home to her flat and she finds a strange person there, a strange man there who is claiming to be her husband. So of course, now naturally you're confused. Like, who are you, sir? But at the same time, she's also a bit intrigued. She's wondering what is going on. Then she discovers up in her attic, because I don't know if you all are actually visually watching or you're just listening to me, but if you're listening to me, on the cover, there's like this ladder going up and it's going into an attic because she discovers that in her attic, she has some electrical short circuit glitch kind of thing that has created a portal to some, you know, a whole bunch of different realities in her life. So what it has been sending her, because, you know, she kind of feels like her life is a mess, it has been sending her different versions of who her perfect partner would be. It's like when you're dating, if you think about when you used to date or if you're currently dating, it's like you have a list in your head of this is the kind of partner you want. Then you meet someone and you're like, I thought I wanted that, but no, that's not it. So she's getting like different versions of what a perfect partner would be. Now, each new husband that she gets changes her life in different ways, sometimes pleasant, sometimes unsettling. And it makes her really start to question, like, is this a life I really want to live? Is this the kind of person that I really want in love? Or are these the qualities that you truly want in both your love life and your personal life? So we see her kind of navigating these really surrealist kind of relationships. And she realizes, obviously, we'll see, as we go on, that finding the one isn't so much about perfection, but it's just more of, like the connection people have. So this one is very funny. It's heartfelt. I think I found it entertaining because I felt it presented a more like modern view of dating. Now, granted, I haven't dated in a long time, but I think it really did that because we live in a world where, I have friends who are dating and it's like this endless possibilities when you're like swiping and all these different options, so to say. So it really takes a look at just like the complexities of, all these different people and all these different options. Okay, and the last book I'm going to share with you is The 100 Loves of Juliet by Evelyn Skye. Now, this one, magical realism, women's fiction, but I wanted to not bring a classic because I'm always bringing a classic, but this time, this is like a classic retelling, okay? It's very fun. So in this one, we meet a woman who has moved to Alaska to rebuild her life. She's moving to this quiet little town to kind of start over. Now, what she did not expect is to meet this stranger who really seems to know her better than even she knows herself. I mean, that can be a bit scary, no? But then he reveals to her, you know what? My name is XYZ, which I don't remember. But in truth, I am actually Romeo, Romeo from Romeo and Juliet. And Helene, or main character, I remember her name, she's actually Juliet. So that was a kind of very interesting kind of revelation. So it's like a modern take on Romeo and Juliet and them kind of, living through different lives and kind of like coming back together. So obviously, because Romeo and Juliet is so old, we see that they've lived and loved each other through countless different lifetimes, always finding each other, but, and this is crucial, never really escaping the tragedy. Because remember, Romeo and Juliet, in my opinion, is not a love story. It is a tragedy, and it's a toxic love story, which I have a video on my channel. So if you're watching on YouTube, go watch Tragic Love Stories in Classic Literature. I go down a list of 7 of them. Yes, this one is number 1 on the list. Not number 1 in how tragic it is, but because Romeo and Juliet is such an OG love story, quote unquote, but it's actually really tragic. So anyway, they don't escape the tragedy. That's not a spoiler, but it is fun to kind of see the modern day versions of themselves. And she's a writer of love stories. She doesn't believe him at first, like, this makes no sense. But of course, because she's a writer too, and of love stories as well, we see her really trying to rewrite history to avoid the tragedy portion of it. So I think it's a wonderful reimagining, again, of one of the most famous love stories, if you want to call it a love story, that was ever told. I also chatted with the author on the podcast as well. So that was also very fun. So you can check out my interview with Evelyn Skye. But those are my 5 books, women's fiction kind of books, centering women and mostly, them having different opportunities as well. So those are my books.
Love this. I am excited for the husbands. I do have the audio, and it's the one that I'm like, oh, I need to listen to this, and you just bumped it up. So that's going to keep me at night. Like my bedtime story.
Yeah, I've had that last book on my TBR because I follow Evelyn Skye's Substack, and I've been wanting to read the book for a while.
Oh, it's lots of fun. And by the way, I felt like I was chatting on a super long time, but she actually has her own story, like her own personal story that I feel in a way is kind of reflected in the novel a little bit about like potentially losing someone because her husband, I don't remember, and I don't want to say anything wrong, but he has a health condition. And it's almost like they had a second lease at love. And,
Mhm.
it's kind of having a relationship when, life itself is so fragile. So
Yeah,
it was a great interview, but it was a really good book. And yeah, I enjoyed it.
fun.
Okay, so Fran, you're up next.
Oh
Let
boy.
us know about your books.
Okay, so I'm actually bringing a mix of older magical realism and some newer, kind of little bit women's fictiony as well. And the reason why I wanted to bring some of what I consider staples and classics, number one, because I think that it's fun to read kind of foundational books in a genre, and I think that these two that I'm going to mention are that, but also because they have adaptations that you can watch. So you can read these books and you can watch the film adaptations. So the first one that I'm going to bring up is The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende. And Isabel Allende, I think it's a staple of, Latin literature, and an author that I have really enjoyed for many years, an author that I had actually been reading since I was younger. And in fact, she has a book coming out this year that I'm super excited about. It's coming out in May. But The House of the Spirits was her debut novel, and this one follows the Trueba family, and it's across multiple generations, and it's set against the backdrop of Chile's kind of really messy political landscape and history. So with this one, I think that the author did an excellent job of mixing in the magical realism elements because our main character, Clara, is clairvoyant and she communicates with spirits. So it also has the stark realities of the political and social upheaval of the times. But I think what is most important, in my opinion, about this book is the fact that this one is very personal to Isabel Allende as an author. She has said many times that if she hadn't been through the personal history of having to be an exile from her country, she probably wouldn't be an author. And she wrote this first novel when she was living in exile in Venezuela. She had to flee Chile because her father was actually the cousin of Salvador Allende. So they lived in exile in Venezuela for many years. And during that time, when she was living away and she couldn't obviously go back to her country, she found out that her 99-year-old grandfather was dying. And she really dealt with the emotions of having to not be able to be near him during that time, not being able to go. So, what she did instead was write a farewell letter to him. And that is what turned into this book. So, I feel that this is such a special story, both in the actual importance in the genre itself and also from the personal perspective as well. Now, this one was made into a film in 1993, so you can actually watch it. It has a super amazing cast. So Meryl Streep is the lead actress in the movie. It also has Antonio Banderas, Jeremy Irons, Glenn Close. So it's got an amazing cast of characters that you can watch. I did check before going on today, and you can access this on Amazon, but it's not included with Prime membership, but you can rent it or buy it on Amazon. I think it was also on Fandango as well, if you want to catch it there as well. But I think it's a great fun one to read the book and watch the movie as well. So the next one that I have is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And don't quote me on 100% of the actual details because this was required reading for me when I was in high school. So it's been a while since I've read it, but I think that it's also full of what I consider are the staple foundations of magical realism because of all the Latin and indigenous influence in the genre and the way that they tell their stories. It really mixes in the magical and the spirit and all of those folklore items with the political times. So it was a way to kind of detail the times that they were going through and all of the harsh realities, but in a way that softened them with and mix them with the indigenous traditions and things like that. So with Gabriel Garcia Marquez, you have a story that follows the Buendia family, and it's set in Macondo, which we're going to be talking here history of Colombia. So the founder of the town is actually a member of this family. And it really deals with, first of all, it spans a whole century, as the title would suggest. And the time is really of colonialism and the town evolving and seeing foreigners come in. It also deals with some foreign companies coming in, like the banana plantation companies, and coming in, and it references a lot of historical events that happen as well, like the 1928 banana massacre, which is basically after these companies come in and killing workers and things like that. So there's a lot of history and political events that it is reflecting real history and real events, but narrating that from this family history, basically. And you're also going to see things like civil wars and all of that kind of stuff as well in this one. So it reflects Colombian history, Latin American history, and it is what I would consider one of the pillars of magical realism that we can see today. Now, this one I also wanted to bring up because you can actually watch it on Netflix. So I have not started watching this yet, so I cannot tell you how, good it represents the story, but I am excited to watch it. I'll probably be watching it this winter, but you can read the book and watch it on Netflix as well. So that could be something fun to do. The next one is more of a modern take, but still blending in those Latin heritage and folklore elements, and is The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Córdoba. So in this one, we have a bit of a more modern take of magical realism, but it's absolutely stunning story with just really beautiful writing. And the story follows also another family. It's the Montoya family, and they've always had magic in their life. So there's things, for example, like their pantry is always full of food, which, I mean, who wouldn't love that? So it kind of just never runs out of food. And they also have a matriarch of the family, which is Orquídea, and she never leaves the house. So then one time she finally invites the whole family to come to the house for her funeral. But when they reach there, there is no funeral because instead of dying, she turns into a tree. And then they have to figure out their inheritance from there, and the story shifts between the her family members figuring out this inheritance while she's a tree now, and the backstory of Orquídea in Ecuador. So you're going through all of her life story, which is really beautiful to see, and how that connects with the present day of her family members and what is the actual inheritance that they have to get. So it's full of family and legacy and just identity, and it really blends in Ecuadorian mythology as well, and culture. Plus, I would say if you are a fan of Encanto or practical magic, this is a great book to pick up. And the next one is The Sugar Queen by Sarah Addison Allen. So Sarah Addison Allen is what I consider one of my favorite magical realism authors. I think that I have talked about her before, which I mentioned probably one of my favorite books, which is Garden Spells. So I wanted to bring you something different, but this is kind of like my warm hug of a book. It's for the cozy readers. And this one is not too heavy. It's about Josie, who is stuck living under her mother's thumb. And her one comfort is that she goes into her closet to basically have her stash of sweets. And until one day, there's a waitress, Della Lee, sorry, that appears in the closet with her, and she won't leave the closet. So it's a very playful take on magic. And I think that it's just a beautiful, beautiful story of like self-discovery of Josie kind of evolving and in her character and just breaking free of expectations. So I think this is a beautiful, comforting kind of book. And I feel like any Sarah Addison Allen would be the perfect comfort magical realism book. I just adore her stories. And then the last book that I have is Midnight at the Blackbird Cafe by Heather Weber. I've also really enjoyed this author in a lot of different genres that she writes. But this is another cozy pick, more of a women's fiction-y vibe. And it's got lots of Southern charm. So if you're looking for a Southern charm with family drama, this is probably a great pick for that. So we have our heroine, Anna Kate, who returns to her small town of Alabama to close out her grandmother's cafe. And there's this whole side of the family that she doesn't have contact with. So she realizes very quickly that there's more to the town and the cafe and that side of her family than she ever knew. So the cafe actually serves these legendary blackbird pies, and they are rumored to help people connect with their loved ones who have passed. So this the magic in this book feels very much like healing and connection, which is just beautiful. And also, it's full of quirky small town characters. So, if you're into that kind of warm community, southern vibe, then this one is a great one for that. And then the last thing that I wanted to bring you, because as soon as I thought of magical realism, this movie keeps popping up in my head, is actually a 90s movie. This is Simply Irresistible by with Sarah Michelle Gellar as starring as the main character. It's a 1999 movie and it is available on Amazon Prime, so free with Prime. And basically, in this movie, she's a chef and she accidentally starts infusing her food with her emotions, which is just a really fun and campy story. So I had a ton of fun watching this. I've watched it several times, and I'm probably going to be rewatching it now that it's available on Prime. So I also wanted to bring that up. I think that magical realism is just such a beautiful genre. So yeah,
Yeah,
have
I
fun
think
with
it's
it.
beautiful. I have to say,
Yeah.
I started reading 100 Years of Solitude in anticipation to watch the Netflix. I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I do want to watch it. I do want to talk about it. I knew I needed a reread before
Yeah.
I, kind of dove into it. So I'm really excited for that one. But that last movie that you said, I have, what was that? Simply Irresistible. I've
Yeah.
watched that. So maybe I should. It's wintertime.
So I do have a recommendation coming up that's similar to this
Well,
movie,
there
so
you
let's be
go.
very exciting. I read 100 Years Solitude 27 years ago because it was my senior year. I wrote a thesis for this because, again, it was
Yeah.
required reading in Latin America. It's like pretty
You
much
have
the same.
to.
We read Don Quixote, and then we read Garcia Marquez. Like, there's no in between. So I have to say, like, I really enjoyed it. I remember writing about the color yellow through the whole story, the symbolism of the color and how it does. Do I remember any of the story? No. But I'm like, it really made an impact in a
Yeah.
way that I was kind of like, I should look back and reread it now
And now
that
you
I'm
can watch
older.
also the adaptation. So
Yeah, I think that would be
So,
helpful. But I think it's so cool to know that in Latin America, it's like required reading. Like, I
yeah.
love it.
yes.
Yeah.
And we're in different countries for those who are listening. We're two
Yeah.
separate countries. Not
Yeah.
We're not related.
Yeah.
I love that. Now, I have to tell you all, I'm always looking forward to Laura because she gives us those cozy, feel good recommendations. So I'm really excited to hear what she's sharing.
So today I'm going to talk about rom-coms that are low AMC. They're a little bit emotional, but not too emotional. They're perfect cozy reads. So we're going to do some time traveling. We got some TV shows that we get to go enjoy, and we get some magical chefs. So the first book is The 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston. Ashley has been a YA author for some time, but she has been releasing adult rom-coms about 3 years ago. And so her books tend to touch upon a magical realism. I'm going to share my two favorite books, but there's a ghost story if you want that. But this one, The 7 Year Slip, is a magical apartment. So there's a woman, Reeve. The heroine is an overworked publicist, and she's just unhappy. She's just trying to figure out what she wants from her life. And she inherits her aunt's apartment, and there's something about the apartment that's magical. Well, it turns out the apartment time travels. So she's like going to one place, and then one day there's a stranger in her house, and it turns out that her aunt has been traveling, has been living on her life, and she decided to sublet the apartment to this guy. And so they're kind of like mixing together, like the apartment just became magical. So it turns out the people from previous tenants can see each other and can leave notes and stuff. And there's a romance between the guy and her, but they're in different timelines. So when are they gonna meet? How's it gonna work? And you just have to keep reading and finding out. And it's just really good. It's a love letter to New York. It's a love letter to the book world and to the idea of traveling and the idea of exploring your life beyond just what you think you should and trying to overcome elements of grief of someone that was so dear and important to your life that you feel connected. And so it helps you kind of like go through the emotions of it, but it's just magical. And it's set in New York, so and it's actually a good New York representation. So that's the 7 Year Slip. The second book is a novel love story, which is also Ashley Christian's. This is last year's release. And this one, so she is I think she's a college professor, and she's driving around. She always looks forward to this reading retreat with her friends about this like series that they're like obsessed with. They are online friends, and they tend to meet once a year in the cabin in the Catskills, and they're just read and enjoy. And the series that she's reviewing hasn't ended. Like didn't end. There was like no ending because the author dies, and so there's like no ending. There's no resolution. It's just unfortunately on the other passes away and the story ends with her. And so everyone ended up bailing in the retreat, and so she ended up driving in a snowbank and somehow stumbles upon the town that the story that she's obsessed with is set. And all the characters from the story are living in this town. And she's stuck in the town because it's a snowstorm. She needs, like, her car is not working, and she's very attached to the car. And they need to get a car, but they have to wait for the car because it's a vintage car. It's an old car. And so she ended up going to the store, she ended up going to the town, and ended up interacting with these people. And somehow the story started to shift because of the way that she interacted. And so she connects with the bookstore owner, and we don't know his story, but he's grumpy, and he was never in the story, but he was sort of in the story. So you're just trying to figure out the logistics. I know it doesn't make sense. I know it doesn't make sense at the end, like how this is all going to work out, but it always does. So that's the beauty of Ashley Poston's books. Is there's something to be said. The hook is so high, but the reward is so good. This is a novel love story. So if you like romance, if you like rom-coms, this is a really a love story to romance. And so it's a really good one for if you're a reader. There's like Easter eggs about other books, and not just her books, but other books in the space of romance. So that's a novel love story. Now we're going to move into some magical realism and time travel. So the second chance here by Melissa Weissner is basically Sadie's down in her luck. She lost her job, her home, her boyfriend in one disastrous year. And she goes to see a fortune teller who grants her a wish. So she wakes up on January 1st, which is a year of she wakes up on January 1st of the previous year. So she goes back 1 year, time travels 1 year back, and then she realizes she has to kind of like uncover and redo her year. And so this is a process of like what decisions you make and those little things you do that are going to shift the year forward. And it's going to hopefully avoid the mishap of losing your boyfriend, your home, your job, and everything else. So you fix the problems before they can become a problem. And so there's a brother's best friend. She actually shares the impulsive kiss with Jacob, and it sets her on a path of rewriting her whole story all over again. So it's just a fun thing. It's a fun New Year's. I think if we're still in January, although it feels like January feels like month 12. Early January, this is like a fun New Year's book to read. There's a little bit of magical realism, there's some romance, there's little inks. It's just fun, just good. I do have an interview with Melissa because she does write magical realism. So there's actually her follow-up book actually also has magical realism elements. So it's kind of like fun. But if you want to hear the backstory about these stories, you can check out her interview on What Free Next podcast. The next one is Direct String Theory by Lauren Kong Jessen. So this one is we're doing with Chinese mythology, so it's just kind of like fun to take on. So Ru Gao is an artist inspired by Chinese legend, a wrestling faith that we're all tied together, we have faith. And so she actually meets Jack, and they go on a magical date. But the problem is that Jack doesn't believe in love. And so every time they're meant to be together, but every time he doubts it, it just takes that away from her. So her job is to actually make him believe in love. So it's just kind of like this idea of fate, the idea of like destiny. Are you meant to be together? Are you not? And then the idea of like, do you believe in relationship? Do you believe in love? And so it's just like inspiring for Chinese mythology, as well as like the love story element and just connecting with this idea, am I meant to be with someone? This is we're about to go to Lunar New Year, so this is a perfect book to read. So if you're looking for recommendations, I think this book, and Lauren has a couple books. She has more Lunar Love. There's about Chinese zodiac and matchmaking, which is kind of like fun. So I really love her books, and she has a new book coming out this year. So you got more than enough to read. I forgot. We are. Oh, the next one. Okay, sorry. I had them matched together. So the next one is Primetime Romance by Kate Rock. This one is basically, imagine this is millennial love of teenage soap opera. So think about yourself and you just absolutely love Dawson's Creek. We're going to do Dawson's Creek because it's pretty much similar to this town. And you just hated the ending, which I did because I did not like that ending. And you want to rewrite the ending. And so the ending, so basically, our heroine is divorced. She's living with a roommate, like a random roommate, and somehow both her and her roommate end up in this town. They can't escape. They have to figure out all the characters from the TV show are there, and they're just like they're just acting. They're older. They're not in teenage years. Or like they're in 30s, and they're all acting like kind of similar or different. And she finds herself that she has to rewrite the ending of the story. She has to rewrite the whole thing and try to figure out. And in her world, she's playing the main character of the story, and she has to, and in her world, in her idea, she has to end up with someone. But there's a little bit of love triangle, so there's somebody else who might be interested, and so it's this whole process. And then her and the roommate are basically joining this town and acting as it, because they cannot leave the town until this all gets resolved. So it is fun. I think she writes fan fiction, so this is like a fan fiction person who just like basically got to rewrite the story. I listened to this on audio. It's an excellent audio to listen to. If you love Dawson's Creek, Felicity, any WB shows, this book is for you. So this is just like good 2000 teenage dramas that we just seem to love and hate the endings for. So that's Primetime Romance by Kate Robb. Kate also has another book, This Spells Love. That's another magical realism. So the final book that I'm going to talk about is Deja Brew by Celestine Martin. So this is a magical chap. So this chap actually has magical abilities and food, and unfortunately, her magical abilities went away. And so her partner in crime, the love interest, has to go and find this cookbook to help her restore her magical abilities. This is a cozy fall romance. It's part of a series where you can read them as standalone. There's so it's just like fun just to imagine. So if you like Simply Irresistible and you would like to have some magical chops, and having the food be infused with your feelings and with your thoughts and your ideas and your intentions, this book is for you. So that's Deja Brew by Celestine Martin.
Technology. Anyway, we are back. I love those picks. I'm here for teenage drama and super angsty kind of reads. So that prime
Yeah.
time, was it? Prime time? Yeah, that's
Primetime
But now
romance.
the most important question is, were you a Pacey or a Dawson girl?
Oh, I was a Casey
We can
all the
continue
way
being
because
friends.
Dawson was
Okay.
like so.
I never watched
He was so annoying. I know, Victoria. This was like a
I'm
formal
like, okay, here comes the
event.
real test to our friendship.
Fun fact about Dawson's Creek. So Dawson's Creek aired in January in 1998. So at the time, I listened to the J. Crew story, the history of J. Crew, which is a
Mhm.
fascinating book to read. They actually talk about the catalog because they were like, these are known kids. We're just gonna do. They're like the typical J. Crew
Yeah.
look. So we just got them to just do this catalog for us, and then the show exploded, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's like Dawson's Creek, Dawson's Creek. It's like the original co-sponsor show. Like you just show up in the catalog, and they're like, "Oh my gosh!" So now you can buy those catalogs on eBay, and they're actually
Oh
gone for
my God.
money. So
Well, if you are watching live and you have a side in Dawson Creek, like let us know in the chat, okay? I haven't watched it, so I know nothing. I plead ignorance because I
Also that Deja Brew sounds so much like Simply Irresistible. So I would say read that
yes,
and then watch that because she also loses her powers in the movie. So I'm like,
yes, I saw that one.
let's put those two together.
My brother says I love Simply Irresistible. I'm all about
Yeah,
90s rom
they're
coms.
so
Are you
good.
surprised? No, we're not. So I love Simply Irresistible. I watched it multiple times whenever it was
Yeah.
on air. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I need to watch this. And the magical and like you cry and the food makes people cry and you laugh and people make laugh. And I was like, oh, what are we infusing? But you know what? It's true. If you infuse love to plans or infuse love to food, the
Yeah,
food tastes better.
that
That's
is
the
true.
difference between restaurant meals and stuff. You just
Yeah,
home cooked meals. We
True,
just infuse
true,
love.
true. Can't fight that one there. But if you're just joining us, again, welcome. Let us know in the chat if you're watching live, where you're joining us from, and what is the temperature where you are, because I feel like everyone is experiencing some degree of cold weather. Okay, whether it's really extreme or just, a little extra colder than normal. I think the weather has changed for us all. I know we have our folks out in California. I know some of y'all are still dealing with the wildfires. So just want y'all to know that we are thinking about you. Let us know in the comments whether you're watching the replay as well, because we'd love to hear from you guys. Now, news, okay? We are gathered here today, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We usually go live for an hour, but things are a changing. So if you walked away from your device or if you're listening and doing something else, starting February 5th, we will be doing a lunchtime show. So we won't be coming together at night anymore. We're going to meet you, whether you're at home, whether you're in the cubicle somewhere, whatever you're doing, you need a little bit of lunchtime distraction. Join us every Thursday starting February 5th. So next week is going to be the last time we will be gathering Thursday night. All right. I know we've been doing this since last year's summer. However, we're going to daytime, okay? We're joining the daytime TV circuit. Now, on that note, we also are going live an extra day every other week for you guys because we have a bookish tea segment. Listen, we love gossip, okay? We love reading books. We love a good old fiction, a little nonfiction every so often, but heavy on the gossip. So we want to gossip with you. We want you to come gossip with us. We had a gossip session this past Monday. So if you're watching on YouTube, get the replay. We had lots of fun. We were talking AI. We were talking about an author who left a chat GPT prompt in their book. We were talking about the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, which, by the way, just watch the finale for Roni, Real Housewives of New York. I will be talking about that next week. Okay? Because woo! And by then, we would have watched Salt Lake City Reunion, part 1. That's just reality TV, but we talk about a lot of things as well. So again, go watch Monday's replay and then join us the week after. What date is this? The 3rd. Okay, the 3rd. So come join us on the 3rd for some bookish tea. So see, we're going live an extra time too. And this is also going to be at noon. So see, it's easy to remember. Every other Monday at noon, and then every Thursday at noon. So we'll be there every Thursday at noon. What else is going on? Upcoming shows. So we just did Magical Realism today. Next week, we're doing books set in Alaska. So we're traveling to Alaska. Come join us to get some book recommendations of books set in Alaska. Then we're going to do the following week some romance stories for Valentine's, right? On the 6th, that's our first daytime show. So that's going to be our first daytime show. And then we're going to talk about best friendship stories. Because listen, sometimes it's not a romantic partner that's the love of your life. Sometimes it's your friends, okay? I am team friends can be soulmates too. We're going to be sharing some of those really great friendship stories. In other news, join us on Substack. If you're not on Substack, what are you doing? We all have Substack publications. We share a lot of stuff over there. This week, we did a day in the life of. And we did a pre-recording. I know you get to see the 3 of us here on live, but what you don't know is we meet every Monday through Friday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern time for our co-working session. We don't just plan lives, we plan content, we talk strategy, we do all kinds of things. You get to join us, right, for part of our co-working session. It's recorded, it's over on our Substack, so sign up to Substack. You also get more of my day in the life of. I know Fran did that as well. Laura has a post coming. So join us over on Substack. If you follow one of us, you'll find all 3 of us. There's that. Also on Substack, I have my winter reading guide. If you haven't already, visit winterreadingguide.com. That will take you to my main website, but when you click the link, it's going to take you to Substack. So again, Substack really is the other place to be. If you're not watching us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, TikTok, whoever you're watching us from, head over there. You'll find my winter reading guide there. Francesca also has Romanceopoly. Fran, tell us about Romanceopoly real quick.
Yeah, remember Romanceopoly? It's a year-long reading challenge, so it's really fun. It's actually a board game, basically, that you're playing. You can go in order, you can roll dice and kind of leave it up to chance. And in fact, the books that we talked about here today, magical realism books, all apply for one of the prompts in Romanceopoly, which is for Mystic Pines, which is to read a magical realism book. So take your pick from any of the books we talked about here today. You can read it for the challenge. So it's about 20 books for the board, and there's always extra additional events. I do have an event coming up at the end of February, and we're going to be announcing all the details for that at the beginning of February. So that's coming soon. And yeah, it's just a way to gamify your reading and hopefully discover something that you would normally not read.
Yes. So just go to romanceopoly.com. But again, I highly recommend you to go to the Substack because the Substack gave me the printable. Okay. Because sometimes I just need an easy, quick printable in my life. Okay. I know Laura has been working on some amazing content. Laura, what's going on over on the Substack?
So we're doing some rom-coms, we're doing some cozy mysteries to your starters, because sometimes you just don't want to know. It's a series worth it to try. So I just feature a Cannabis Cafe cozy mystery series. So think about the pod and egg bakery and all the edibles. So it is a fun one. And then just doing some like day in the life, some bookish tips, some library tips, as well as some Kindle Limited tips, so you can maximize your services and read on a budget. So you're not if your goal is to save money and not spend money on books, I'm your girl. I'm gonna help you save as much money as you can while reading as much money. Reading as much as you
Yes,
can.
yes. So again, all our Substacks are valuable. We all bring something unique. But again, if you subscribe to one, you'll easy access the links to subscribe to all of us. So I hope you'll join us on Substack. I also hope you'll join us next week when we will be talking about magical books set in Alaska. Today we did magical realism. Next week we are doing books set in Alaska. It will be our last time gathering at Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time because again, we are going daytime, novel hour, because we're like, man, we can't say nights at 12 p.m. Eastern time. Like, that ain't right. So, novel hour. But again, you can catch up on all our past episodes. We have a YouTube playlist again on each of our channels. But we hope you'll join us for lunchtime. We hope you'll tell a friend to tell a friend and you'll join us and we'll have some fun. And like I said, we also have the gossip section on Mondays. So every other Monday, it's going to be a good time. And look, if you heard of some gossip and you don't want to say it in the comments, listen, just send us a little message, okay? We appreciate your help as well. But yeah, I think that's it for today. Everyone, take care. Stay warm. Stay warm, especially if you're somewhere where it's extra chilly. But until next time, we'll see you all soon. Bye,
Bye.
Right?